Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the first 100 days. This season, we'll ask revenue leaders to share their stories around building alignment between sales, marketing, and RevOps. Our guests today are Justin Keller, VP of Revenue Marketing at Drift, and Kevin Vanes, VP of Sales at Terminus. Before they held those titles, the two worked together at SigStr. A company later got acquired by Terminus, where Justin sat in marketing and Kevin, unsurprisingly, in sales. Our conversation today is going to focus on their time at SigStr, when they first met and worked together, specifically on how they were able to establish a target account, or also called ABM or ABX program.
My name is Justin Keller. I am the VP of Revenue Marketing at a company called Drift. And I remember the first time I met Kevin, I was in a little call room at my old company in San Francisco, and I got on a camera with him just to I was interviewing for this job as the head of marketing at a company called SigStr, and I'm like, I need to spend some extra time with their head of sales just to make sure he and I will vibe. Like, that's going to be the most important relationship. So I'm going to ask him to take an extra hour out of his day just to make me feel good. And he did a great job.
Yeah, spoiler, Justin took that job. That's why we're here on this podcast together.
Oh, Kevin, do you want to give some intro?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm currently Vice President of Sales, working with our customers in the existing business at Terminus, an ABM software solution. And as Justin was just sharing, I was one of the first employees, probably too early of an employee given my background at SigStr. And I vividly remember going through the head of marketing hiring process. And I remember after Justin, to trade stories, Jay, I remember after you came in your fancy jacket from San Francisco and presented to us in what was office 2 of 10 probably, in what was our boardroom, grabbing Brian afterwards and just yeah, that's it. Justin's gonna be who we're gonna work with.
So it sounds like you guys started up in a really strong foot, great vibing from beginning. So we're going to get a little bit specifically for one of the projects. I think, Justin, you mentioned to me that you guys worked on the account, moving from lead-based to account-based.
Mm-hmm. That was, one of the things I loved about working with Kevin is we were always on each other's team, understood all the headwinds that one another faced. The one thing that was tricky, and we both worked together to figure it out, was that transition to being account-based. And I remember it was one of those things where we had to do it as a company. We were in MarTech space. We had ABM capabilities within our product, and we had to drink our own champagne, as it were. And so we were we have to do it. There's not we didn't even really need to build the business case for it. It's just we got to do this. And I remember trying to figure this out with Kevin. How do we actually just get our marketing team, get our sales team to worry less about the entire world and just care about a tiny sliver of this universe? And the first time we did it, it starts with the account selection, right? We're who should we go after? And I think we're well, let's just let the AEs pick accounts. We'll let them pick 10 each. And we did that, and they came back. We were a B2B company, small, scrappy startup. They came back with accounts like Nike and Norwegian Cruise Lines, companies that were never going to buy our software, but also were just not in our ICP. It was one of those things. That was one of the first hiccups we had.
Anybody could use it. Was email signature software. So theoretically, any B2B company could use it because they're all sending emails. And then who AEs wanted to sell into was very different than who the business was good at selling into. Yeah, I want the biggest companies, the biggest deal size, right? And I think there was also just I learned a ton, how we positioned it to the AEs. I'd go back and start from scratch, right? Hey, this is going to help us warm up accounts. I remember that was a lot of what we talked about, right? Where now, 4 years later, deep in ABM, it's so much more than just warming up accounts, right? Or helping them get a first meeting. It's the whole cycle that we're going to help you with. And it doesn't have to be the biggest, doesn't have to be the smallest. It just has to be the right account so that it hits those indicators that change your business. Faster deal cycle, maybe a little bit of a bigger deal cycle. Maybe you win a few more. You're not going to move all those, and you need to pick the one that it's going to have the biggest impact on your business.
And how big was SigStr at the time?
Maybe 50 people, maybe like $2 million in revenue. I mean, pretty small.
Yeah.
Really small.
Yeah, that's hundreds of customers. So I mean, it gives you a sense of deal size, right? And what we're trying to go after. That's what we ended up chasing so much, Justin, is just bigger deal size. We chased deal size like it was everything, and I'd go back and chase velocity if I could do it all over again.
Exactly.
So basically, at this, I mean, back in, you're talking about 4 years ago, at 50 employees, to think about like, let's do account-based motion, that's pretty advanced. Because I remember 4 years ago, like ABM, yes, it existed, but not everyone talks about it, and usually they only save it for well accounts. So what drove you guys to like, let's do this, let's drink the champagne, but also do it ourselves?
I think to Kevin's point, right? Like it was kind of like, I mean, I think a lot of marketers or like revenue oriented people have two options, like more smaller deals or fewer big ones, right? And it's kind of like, where do you want to park your chips? Because you can't do both well. And I think, at least from my perspective, interested in Kevin's, I had a very, very modest budget to work with. And when I looked at like the pipeline I needed to be building, I was like, there's no way I can make this budget number turn into that pipeline number without some miracle. And so it ended up being one of those things where like, rather than do that kind of bottoms up funnel math, here's how many deals I need to get in the sales guy's pipeline, here's my cost per opportunity all the way up to cost per lead. I was like, screw it. If I can pick, let's say there's 1,000 total accounts we could go after. If I can turn 50 of those into piped opportunities, there we go. I did the job. And it just kind of like, I don't know, somehow seemed easier, also way more challenging at the same time because it was a brand new way of doing it. But it also, like, the economics made a lot more sense to me as a marketer.
Yeah, you're said from sales perspective, like Justin and I never argued about pipeline, but the driving force was we never had enough pipeline, which is like the bane of every startup's existence, right? Like
it's the bane of every business. I've never once had someone say, "Yeah, pipeline's great, we're good."
Yeah, go hit these numbers. We don't have the pipe to hit them. What are we gonna do? Let's try this ABM stuff.
Makes sense. So it sounds like it's more like how to figure out to build enough pipeline with a limited budget that a small startup had back in the day was like, sounds like the main driver. You mentioned about like velocity as well. I think, Kevin, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Like, was it something that you guys actively like measuring yourself against?
That was, we had our pipeline, like our revenue model completely dialed. We knew our win rate, we knew our sales cycle, we knew how much pipe we had at any given time. And so when you start to punch those things through and even dial them up and dial them down. So what did I cover? Deal size, win rate, total pipeline, and length, right? So as you dial some of those things up and down, you start to figure out like, what can we actually influence, right? You can train the team to win more, or you can bring in the right companies to win more. And we were using that constantly because we had good win rates. They were over from first meeting, like not even accepted, just I will talk to you. We had a 20+% win rate. So like some of the fundamentals of the business were really, really good. We were just never pumping enough through to really hit that point where, you're running with your hair on fire. We were running with our hair on fire, but not because the pipeline was forcing us to do. We're running with the hair on fire to create the pipeline.
Got it. So you guys started out building, okay, let's do account motion. And then the first step, I guess the first attempt was getting the AEs to pick their pet accounts. And they went out and they saw the billboards, looks like a great company, they list that. What happened?
I feel like, so we said, first of all, no. These are not going to work. We got to go back to the drawing board. I don't remember. I remember where we ended up, and I don't remember the iterations we went through to get there. I think we probably overcorrected, and then marketing picked all of their accounts for them. Is that how it went,
Justin, if I remember, marketing came back and said, now choose from this list versus, completely open-ended.
That's where we ended up. It was kind of like, I think what we did was marketing chose all of them, and then sales was kind of like, I don't want these, right? It was kind of like, and then I think the deal we made was, okay, we will, we'll pick 50 for you to pick 10 from, right? So there was some skin in the game from them, and that ended up working pretty well, I think, and that's kind of how I approach it even now.
I remember with Sarah creating a board and where we had them in we were cracking into 10% plus, which is really, really high, because we tracked it. So we did some good things when it came to marketing, sales dev, which at different times reported up through Justin and I. They kind of bounced around, and we're successful wherever they work, not because of Justin, probably because of Sarah, not probably because of Sarah, and then later Kramer. But I remember tracking, and just that was another thing like that. That was really, really working with getting meetings at a good clip, right? When you think about Justin, you said it all the time. What's the MQL number? Like 0.003% of them end up converting.
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
We ended up having good conversion rate, not just to meeting, but then to customer for. I mean, as a small subset, like Justin said, we were 50 people, eight, maybe at most 10 AEs. So we're talking like not a whole lot of accounts we're putting through this program, 50 to 100, 100-ish.
Yeah.
That's always the question. Like, there's always the thought that ABX only works with large budgets or like with like large targets. But I guess if, I mean, your thoughts there, but I think my first thought would be like, if you have a good win rate, I think that influences it even more than anything else. Or what are your thoughts?
I didn't necessarily have to go through the ROI analysis of the software, right? That Justin had to go through. And there's certainly some economics that have to play out. You got to have enough of those smaller deals to create the velocity. But I think it as long as there's alignment on what you're trying to accomplish and you can feasibly do that, then I think it's too easy to say it only works on big deals.
Yeah,
I think it's an easy excuse.
Yeah, I think I do ABM at a vastly larger scale now, and I can't capture the magic that we had there, because I think why it worked so well for us was it wasn't ABM or ABX that worked because we threw a bunch of money at it. It's because we threw so much love at it. We had, like Kevin said, like a board of, I call it 100, it might have been 200 target accounts that we had, over a 6-month period, and it was like, this is all that matters. Sales dev, AEs, marketing team, this is all that matters. Like, let's do nothing but create magical experiences for these people. And that became, in my opinion, kind of viral, right? Like, we were only going after 200 accounts, but like the emotion that kind of reverberated out from that was something that I think helped the overall brand and demand engine grow.
Everybody struggles with focus, and nobody wants to stick to anything anymore, right? Like, what's every marketer's told to experiment?
Yeah.
Okay. A bunch of experiments. What are you actually making?
That's true. No,
and
it's true.
I think it's a focus for like marketing by itself, and then the same focus for actually marketing and sales. I feel like they're two different focus that are like herding cats internally and with others.
Well, Christian, we were both experiencing the same pain. Like, the pipeline challenge was very real for Justin, for myself, and for both of our teams. So the alignment came from the pain we were experiencing and trying to solve together.
Was there at any point, like after like the account selection, because the hard part is like, yes, build alignment, agreement on both sides, handshake, have SLA, but then sustaining that alignment throughout the 6 months and beyond. Was there any other things that didn't work out the way you guys anticipated at the beginning, and you guys had to like correct course?
There were times it was hard to be like, I will never forget sitting with you and B. Wade and Sarah and the larger group and going down like item by item and being like, events aren't working. But events were a part of our ABM strategy. And I think, on the spreadsheet in the conference room, it was clearly said events aren't working. If you walked out that door and asked every single employee, like, our best marketing activity, it was events, hands down. So there was always those fighting for like true clarity and black and white answers, and black and white answers were hard. I think there was a lot of just faith tests for us along the way that created like certainly some doubt. Heck, we both had to walk into those board meetings and answer the questions, right? And so if things weren't where they needed to be, you see a lot of companies fall apart there, right? Where it's like, well, marketing's not doing their job. I don't have the leads to close. My win rate's 25% this quarter. What do you want me to do?
Yeah. And that is such a good point. Like, I think it is, there are times where, a marketing leader or a sales leader is not pulling their weight, right? But I think believing that one another is, and you can hold each other accountable, absolutely, but like knowing that everyone, like each other are doing everything they can, it's such a hard like covenant to come to. And that is, I think that's one thing I think, you know, Kevin and I were lucky to have, is that we did trust each other and knew, you know, each other were smart and, you know, had the company's best interests at heart. And so we were able to kind of short circuit a lot of those really difficult conversations, being like, look, we're in this together. But I have almost every other time in my career not had that luxury where I've got a salesperson who's just constantly trying to find a bus to throw me under because I'm not generating enough pipeline for him or her. And the whole machine works better when you do have that collaboration. Like Kevin said, like, I mean, even to the point of attribution, like, was marketing responsible for generating this, or was sales responsible for generating this? Towards the end there, we didn't give a shit. It was like, hey, the pipeline's there. We'll share credit. We'll not take credit. Who cares? The pipeline is what matters for the company.
So you guys were lucky that you guys hit it off immediately. Maybe it was because of Justin's jacket. I don't know. But what was it that made you guys work so well together? Like, can it be like replicated?
Ooh.
There was no ego. I mean, it was and that started with Dan, right? Like our founder and CEO at the time. Like there was never any ego about it, right? And we talked a lot about being hard on problems, not on people, and maybe to a fault sometimes. Like not pushing each other to do better, but like we were all more experienced in our careers. We had all experienced different types of things, and in fact, all of us had come from different backgrounds. You had done more startups than I had, Justin. I was coming from a publicly traded company, which was painful. That's a whole nother episode, by the way, to unpack. But all those things layered in. It wasn't. Was it all scary? But it wasn't necessarily the first time we had seen scary, right? Or had to try and overcome things with collaboration. We weren't in year 2 or 3. Or even 4 or 5. Like we were all 10 plus years into our career at the time.
Yeah, I think Kevin nailed it. Like there was no finger pointing, like that, and that came from having no egos. It was like, we're in this together.
I think that the comment about like how much could this be the founder, like who is this person both report to, and how can this person influence it? And I think at least what we are seeing here, the no ego part is probably already part of the interview. Like did you find the right people? And then I would say the second step is kind of like, how can in this case, maybe the founder, the CEO, make sure that there is this trust? I think as soon as I stop trusting and like, okay, I don't think this is the best step, what like my sales counterpart is doing, and then I start doing something on the side. So I feel like actually maybe the advice is less about like Kevin and Justin and more about like what actually should the manager be doing.
Yeah, I think you're right on there, Christian. And I think you may have hit on something, because I think this may be a one-sided story, but at least in my memory, so our founder, Dan, turned over the helm to a guy named Brian Wade, who became the CEO. Really, really amazing dude. And he very seldom got up in my face, like tried to really get into my marketing program too much. Like he usually trusted that we were doing the right things. I don't know if the same's true for Kevin, though.
Brian started in sales, so I think he felt like he fit in there a little bit more. So yeah, he'd get involved in the sales motion, but also at that stage, a company or CEO should be more involved in deals, right? But you hit on something, Justin. Like Dan early on identified he needed help, and he needed Brian's type of help, and he went and hired his own new boss. Like that sets one heck of a tone across an entire company, right? When that's the benchmark for expectation on putting company and team first. But yeah, no, remember Brian started as a SolCon and was in sales before he got into product. So he dug in more. But yeah, he was never granular, right? Like, let me see these numbers. It's just, hey, tell me how you're going to get there. Was more Brian's MO, and then getting involved. Like he loved rolling up his sleeves and jumping in anywhere he could, customer facing with us.
Yep, especially on the customer side. I think that's maybe this is nice, kind of retrograde therapy for me, because I do now look back and be like, look, he didn't try to run every department. He tried to help his leaders, and he trusted them that they were doing the right things. If there was an issue, he'd click on them, but he wouldn't like He wouldn't try and break you down or kind of say this is your fault. He would just try to get to the problem.
So it sounds like the common thread is like trust all around, like trust from the management to their team, but also trust between, like among you guys, and and then that cascades down to your team as well. How do you manufacture trust? That's hard. How do you replicate that?
It's so hard. Right? It's so hard. And I think it's become even harder. Like, I don't know, Kevin, if we could have had the same run, because we 5X'd SigStr in about 2.5 years. I don't think we could have replicated that if we were working from home. Like, there was so much of the energy that was just kind of like lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. Oh no. This is going to be controversial.
Don't say that. Okay.
It is such an interesting topic nowadays. Like, there was, like, I don't know because I haven't started another company in today's environment, but there is so much of that early culture and information sharing as things, you know, and now there's tools that didn't exist then that could probably help bridge some of that gap. But yeah, there is something too. I was just in the office last week and I forgot how nice it was to sit next to Charlie Bloom, and just to turn to him like, hey man, I forget how to fix this. Can you help me? I'm jumping on a call in 2 minutes. Yeah, Slack could have done the same thing, but man, was it nice to see Charlie turn to me and just help me? Like it was really, really nice. And that happens all over the place, right? Or in those early days.
I love offices, so.
She says from at home. Okay.
Okay, all right.
Oh, I'm huge. I'm converted. I love being at home. Love it. I think absolutely love it. So.
Yeah, I love the flexibility, but I hear what you guys are saying. I want to go back to one of the points you guys mentioned. So your SDR team was moved from sales to marketing multiple times back and forth. I'm assuming this is part of the account-based motion, or is it just overall? And why did you guys do that?
That was probably one of the more difficult conversations we had, Justin, right? Like, Sarah was a super high performer, and we were trying to figure out, like, just what was the right, like, so the sales side of the argument was we paired them with their AEs. It was a development track. It was a feeder system. It was a farm system. They should live in sales. Marketing provided all the messaging and their direction on the accounts, and they needed to be fully engrossed in our go-to-market verbiage and everything that Justin was doing with content. So like it was I don't think there was a right or a wrong answer. It had been in sales forever, and I will never, even Emily helped us work through that, right? Like that was a big ego test, like just from a roles, and it was a big team.
It was a big team. I don't know, I've seen it bounce back and forth. Like, I think it's like, you know, it's like the cycles of the moon. Like, where's the SDR team today? And there's really good reasons to have it in one or both. I do think though that what I found through that was that, like, if you are super account focused, if you're trying to get at market, if you're really trying to like make your SDRs part of your marketing channel, then it's better for them to live in marketing. We did the same thing at Drift. We recently moved the SDRs under me here for that exact reason. That said, Kevin's right. Like, that's your farm for your future AEs for the most part. And they, you know, there does need to be that alignment with the sales team, and they've got to have that trust. And that's where I think, to your question about how do you manufacture trust, when you've got people that report up through you who are relied upon very heavily by people that are not in your department, trust is critical. Otherwise, that thing's going to fall apart really quickly, and people are going to be miserable in their jobs.
Yeah, for us, like we have ADR within the marketing team. Just from the like, keep it like, marketing is responsible for top of the funnel. Like, we source, like, there's no attribution, there's no inbound versus outbound. Everyone go out together, source that pipeline. But right now we're addressing like, how do we make sure that there's a career development path, because a lot of the ADR wants to become AEs. So a lot of pairing and coaching to make sure that they're ready to become like AE level 1 when it's time. So definitely living right now what you guys just described.
Yeah. Although I feel like once they moved to marketing, we turned a lot more of our SDRs into marketers than we did. I think it started. There may be a trend there. Yeah.
Yeah, they start picking up those stripes.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. I can totally see that. Yeah. I'm actually curious, like if you start right from the beginning, them like SDRs being in marketing, I think this is one thing. But kind of like if you actually move them over from sales to marketing, like do you actually have internal conflict? Like, kind of like you're reducing my headcount by maybe like 50% as a sales leader?
Yeah, I mean, like that's part of the ego check, right? Like, yeah, it was certainly like, and it was a question like, is this because I'm not helping that team perform the way it should be, or is this a business decision that makes sense? Like, even if it's just a business decision that makes sense, you have to set that aside if you're self-aware, because you should be asking yourself these questions if you want to be improving, right? Even if the answer is no, that's just an easy business decision. We're going to try something new, makes sense for where how the strategy is shifting. I don't know. You can't help but be introspective a little bit and be like, could I be doing something better? What could I have done?
Yeah, it seems like every quarter was kind of that introspection. Like, well, that quarter did not go quite the way we hoped. What is wrong with me as a human that could have made this better?
Yes, I came up with the term a healthy sense of indifference, and that is, I have that mantra now about work, like healthy sense of indifference, to separate just that, Jay. Like too many crisis of conscience or confidence.
I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna even use that with my team too.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, it's hard. Like when the world is going one way and your expectation or forecast is another way, the team does feel the burden, right? So like sometimes it's good to be a little bit indifferent.
Yeah.
We'll be okay. We're gonna make it.
Just a healthy amount.
Yeah, sounds great.
Which everybody can define as something different.
Exactly. So just to, in terms of like advice for so you guys touch on a lot of key points that many revenue practitioners are going through right now. So from the account base, like setting from lead base to account base is one thing, but also like just the SDR, where do they sit? These are the things that I keep hearing people talk about, like, oh, how do I manage and develop SDR now that they're under marketing? I want to go from MQL to account base. What are your tips if you have to distill down advice, like top 3 tips?
Yeah, I guess I'd be happy to lead. I think about a couple of things, Trinity. One, I'd make sure I have a clear business objective for ABM, and that really has to start with, it's not just it's not just a marketing tactic. It's a philosophy that's going to achieve efficiency. So start there. And if you don't have alignment, then that usually has to go up to some sort of, for us, it was the CEO. Like Brian and Dan, whomever had to be bought into that for Justin and I to be able to go and execute it. So that's, if you don't have that, like you're going to have it's going to be a hard row to hoe. And then once you've established that, move into what is the one revenue metric I think I can influence, because theoretically ABM should be more efficient. Do I want to shorten my deal cycle? Do I want to get some bigger deals? Do I want to create opportunities at a higher rate? Right? So don't try and boil the ocean. And then the third piece would be like, start super, super, super small. Like, don't overwhelm yourself. Like, I mean, if you think like ABM could easily start to include not just these accounts, but then how many is they can include different stages of the pipeline, do things different. Then I'm including direct mail, and I'm going to include events or like one-to-one outreach. Like it can get overly complicated super fast, because it is more than just a channel or a tactic. It's a true program or a philosophy. So like pick an SDR and an AE and try and run a few programs, and then start to build and layer slowly, but be a little bit methodical about it. I know that's hard in a world where we want to experiment and try different things, right? But being methodical to build it the right way. There's so many resources now. Like, it's stupid. Like to mess it up means you didn't look hard enough or ask for help. Sorry, I should say you're going to make mistakes, but to not get off to a good start because of lack of willingness to look or find the resources is a bit of a failure.
Everything Kevin said was 1,000,000% true. I think to underpin it is, we didn't, our first true ABM campaign, we had no technology for it. It's not like you need to spend money against it. It was literally me and the marketing team sitting down and literally making 100 landing pages for 100 different accounts that were all personalized. Mm-hmm. And getting the sales team to understand what we're doing and to care about it. And that's kind of like, that was the hard thing that is the hardest thing to scale, I think, with an ABM program, is like that amount of partnership between marketing, between the sales dev organization and the sales team, understanding what everyone's doing, where to look, where to be when they're going to get the ball passed to them, how to like, look at data, how to communicate. That's the really hard stuff. You can buy all the tech you want in the world. It doesn't mean it's going to work if you don't have that alignment and that agreement.
In the board meeting, did you guys present together in one slide, or how, when you talk about alignment, like, do you guys split up in terms of like marketing present the top of the funnel and then sales present their part, or do you guys partner together and present like one pipeline together?
We definitely shared pipeline. I don't remember, we didn't share a slide other than pipeline. I think pipeline was a both of us thing.
Yeah, and the way they ran the board meetings changed over time. Like, we were all in there, to start, and then we would rotate through the different sections, so we wouldn't all have to sit in these meetings all day. So they evolved over time. But I'd say most of the ABM stuff, Justin, like, fell to you. I was a lot of rep productivity and deal cycle metrics is what I focused on a lot with the board.
No, I do think I'm just trying to rewrite history, and I'm thinking it would have been cool if we or if your sales and marketing leaders were responsible for the same content in a board meeting. I think that's kind of a good way of forcing some friendship to happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you've got the board staring at you, looking at that, I think that's a pretty good forcing function.
That's great. Well, I really envy the relationship that you guys have. So I hope that we have it here at User Gems too, because it sounds fantastic. But thank you so much for making the time.